inciting element for us to talk about this week is a Supreme Court decision, a very welcome one from the Indian Supreme Court, which is not political in the way the American one is. Although we can get into that, but the Indian Supreme Court had a verdict last week saying that what has been termed in India as bulldozer justice or bulldozer Raj, Raj meaning rule, is illegal. Now, just to explain what that term has come to mean, particularly over the last 3 years, is that in the aftermath of the big Citizenship Amendment Act protests, where Muslims, particularly, but those in favor of civil rights, minority rights across the board, came out to protest the government's attempts to go after minorities. The chief ministers in a number of BJP ruled states started using this new approach to take on those who they saw as being responsible for riots, for violence, for mob attacks or just general disorder. And the way they did it was, if someone was charged with, say, a riot or arson or pelting stones at a police station or something like that, they would go in the next day with an excavator or a bulldozer and just demolish that person's home. Often these were poorer folks coming from a lower strata of society. In some cases, their houses were not necessarily entirely regular in terms of the legalities. India has a large amount of informal housing, and so there's often things issues you can take up with them. None of which makes it legal for the state to just go and demolish this, but it was sold as a way of providing instant justice, because the actual judicial system in India is often seen as just taking far too long to finally convict or acquit people, and so this became so popular that BJP leaders became known as like Bulldozer Baba. A JCB, the excavator, became such a symbol that even when Modi visited the US, somebody pulled out a JCB in New Jersey at a pro-Modi rally. And so it really became a symbol of how the BJP was harsh on or strong on law and order, so to speak, but without any thought to due process. The court has now said all of this is not permissible. You need to follow due process. You can't just demolish people's houses. And there's a number of elements that I can dig into, but yeah, the key sort of thing that's jumped out here is the Supreme Court saying no, this is not allowed.
Two questions that come out of that, and we might have other questions, and Emily, I'll let you come in a second. But the first is that the way that the iconography of the bulldozer or the JCB has been used suggests that this is popular, or at least popular enough that with a particular constituency of voters, it's something that the BJP wants to absolutely run with publicly. And it would be nice to hear a bit more about the dynamics of that and what the political opposition, as opposed to the judicial rulings on it, are concerned. And the other thing is that, given that this stuff was extrajudicial in the first place, how much impact practically is the Supreme Court ruling going to have? Is this stuff just going to stop, or is it going to carry on happening? You may not know yet, but how would you expect that to go?
Good question. So popular, it evidently seems to be so from the fact that once it was really pushed forward in UP by the chief minister there, it got picked up by other BJP-led chief ministers elsewhere. And then it started to be used not just, so it was at this point popular, particularly when used against minorities. So it fit in quite well into the idea of Muslims being often a bad influences, prone to criminalism and so on, the kind of things that you see in Islamophobic politics all over the world. But then it got even pulled up by non-BJP chief ministers, most, I think, specifically the Aam Aadmi Party, which used it more in the case of just general disorder and taking on, let's say, drug mafias and so on. So it was picked up by others, and I think that bit of the popular end is just a reflection of a sense in India that the court system, the judicial system, cannot be trusted to quickly at least deliver justice. And so the executive has to step in and do things. There's a much darker version of this, which is what in India we call police encounters, which is in cases usually involving big drug dealers or folks involved in rape cases. they will often be killed in a shootout with the police, with the claim being that they attempted to grab a weapon and run away. But then often it's just a dog whistling about police carrying out extrajudicial encounters. And again, these are relatively popular in India. It's really problematic, but it comes out of a sense that the courts don't act quick enough, or the legal system, let's not say the courts. On the flip side of whether it will be there's an interesting set of things that the court has done. The court has not named what the problem is here. In some ways, they've sort of skirted around it. Nobody actually ever made the argument in court that these kinds of demolitions were meant to be punitive. The municipality would turn up in court and say, no, we're demolishing this because these were irregular buildings. Of course, there's 20 irregular buildings and only that person's was taken down. But importantly, the court was the municipality, the politician would go out and say, we got these terrible folks doing these terrible things. But actually in court, it would be justified in the sense that that there's something inherently illegal. There is a law broken here, and so on. The court has done a couple of interesting things in an attempt to solve this problem, even though they haven't named it quite clearly. What they've done is they've said things like that people who do this wrongly without justification, bureaucrats who do this wrongly will be personally liable, including financially, if it's found to be wrong. Also, that they need to give 15 days notice for anyone to be heard on whether their property is allowed to be demolished or not. And most importantly, and this is often abused with due process in India, they've said that you cannot backdate, because what happens, we've had guidelines like this in the past saying that you need to give a hearing to the folks. What the court has said is that any executive officer making this decision has to write it out, give their reasoning for why this is the most proportional way to deal with this, and send a copy to the local magistrate, so that they're not like backdating and said we gave the notice even though they didn't actually do this. All of these are efforts to try and deal with the way governments have picked this up and overlooked due process. And hopefully, as a couple of folks have argued, hopefully the possibility that it just delaying it by 15 days, 20 days, takes away the incentive for the politician to go out and get it done. Like, because it is meant to be immediate justice that the executive delivers, there's a hope that it will have an effect, but it is somewhat popular. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening.